What are your customers saying about you online? And how can you turn that into more sales? Today, I am joined by Brooke Sellis from B Squared Media, who is going to delve into the fascinating world of social listening and how you can use your social media to improve your sales and your relationship with your customers. Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Catherine Erdley. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Brooke, I'm delighted to have you with us on the podcast. Do you want to start us off by introducing yourself and your business?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Brooke Sellis, and I'm the CEO and founder of B Squared Media. We just turned 13 this May, so I feel like we are a dinosaur in the social media world. But essentially, we offer social media services around social media intelligence. So we do management, we do paid media, and then our big service that we're well known for is social media customer care.
Amazing. And we're going to be getting into all of that today, and I'm super excited about it. But can you just tell me a little bit about how you got started, kind of what led you to this arena of social listening and customer care through social media? Like, what was it that kind of got you into it?
Yeah, well, so I had started building out social media services, like not unlike what we have today for a woman who I worked with back in Texas. Many moons ago. And it was almost like I was testing the concept for my own business, but I didn't know it yet. However, my dad and my then boyfriend definitely knew it, and they kept pushing me to start my own thing. They're like, you've basically created this whole new business for her. You see that it works. Like, you should do this on your own. I was scared, of course, as many of us are, to make the leap into entrepreneurship. But my dad tricked me in a way, best trick ever. And he was like, hey, by the way, I won you a pitch with the CMO at my company. He worked at a fintech company at the time. And he was like, but here's the deal. And he made me shake his hand. I remember in their kitchen very vividly. And he said, if you win the pitch, you have to do this on your own. So like moonlighting, basically, like having a job on the side. And I didn't think I was going to win the pitch. So I shook his hand. I was like, deal. I won the pitch. And that became B Squared's first client. And then once you make that little leap and you find out like, oh, this isn't going to be as terrible as I thought it was going to be, it made it easier for me to kind of leave the company I was at and take all of these wonderful things that I had built and do them on my own.
Fantastic. So I love that. So, I mean, what we're really talking about here is looking at what your customers are talking about online, or paying attention to your online customer sentiment and social mentions. So can you explain a little bit about how that helps, particularly small businesses, how it can help improve customer experience and basically drive more sales?
Sure. Well, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you know that a lot of things happen online, like this show. But really, what pushed us forward by almost 10 years, analysts say, was COVID, right? When COVID happened, we all kind of collectively moved online. Even those of us who weren't comfortable being online had to move online. That is where we lived, we shopped, we connected with our people, and that never really changed. And so what analysts say is that the online shopping of it all, the way we start to research brands, look for discounts, talk to our peers about which brands we should or shouldn't buy from, moved forward by about 10 years thanks to COVID. We moved forward very quickly in this digital transformation, and now literally this is the way it is, right? This is the way, as they say in The Mandalorian. So I think it's like 86% of U.S. consumers, and I'm talking U.S. because most of our clients are U.S., but the statistics are pretty similar around the globe.
For sure.
As long as they have access to internet. But 86% of consumers now do their shopping through social media. They research brands. They look for brand conversations. The younger generations, millennials and Gen Z, weight brand conversations, meaning if somebody comes along to your brand and says, hey, Catherine, do you have these shoes in a size 8? Mm-hmm. And you say, oh, well, yes, we do. And we actually ship for free for that price or whatever, right? You're engaging in that conversation. These younger generations look at those brand conversations and actually weight them as high or higher than online reviews.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's really shopping and e-commerce and social commerce have really changed the game, even for B2B brands, by the way, on how people shop. So it's so important if you have a brand that has a presence on social to make sure that that presence is conversational so that people can kind of spy, lean in. It's a spectator sport. See what you're saying to people who are asking you questions or leaving you bad reviews.
Yeah.
And then decide if they want to also buy from you.
That's really fascinating. And, now you say that, I definitely do look for that. I always find it really funny when I see a brand and I see that they have comments on their socials and they've not responded. I always look at that and I always think, that is such a low-hanging fruit, I guess I do probably pass a little bit of judgment. Like you say, like if you see a brand that's really super engaged and they're responding, and even if someone says, oh, I wasn't happy with this, and they say, oh, hey, can you drop us an email and we'll sort it all out for you, you definitely do get like a more positive picture, right?
Absolutely, yes. And I mean, I know I work in this world, so I'm very biased, but same thing, like it's wild to me that brands still aren't responding to people who are coming to their brand and like saying like, hey, I'm trying to check out and I can't. They are literally trying to give you their money and then you're not responding. It blows my mind. Even just doing that, by the way, is passive. There are people who are talking about your brand and not tagging you on socials. Instead of mentioning like at Nike, they might be talking about their Air Jordans. They're still talking about one of your products. They're still talking about the brand, but you're not getting that notification in your inbox because it's called like a dark mention or an indirect mention. The only way you can see those is through social listening. What I know to be true is that if I see you not responding to direct mentions, I know that you're not responding to any of the conversations happening around your brand on social. And that honestly leaves kind of a yucky taste in my mouth.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about then specifically responding to online feedback or customer sentiment. You talked about just ignoring it completely, but what are some of the other common mistakes that businesses make and how can they maybe handle it better?
I think a lot of times when we engage with brands for social care, in the beginning, what we hear them say is often this, our employees work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And that's great. That's wonderful. But as we all know, social media happens 24/7. And for whatever reason, the bad things always seem to happen after hours, on weekends, during the holidays, right? Your oven is always going to break during the holiday when you have like 20 people coming over. It's just the way it works. They often, because they have that limited amount of time, only focus on the negative comments that come into the brand. And I obviously think it's very important to talk through those negative comments and show face, but a lot of times they're not doing anything with the positive comments. So all of that brands love, all of that what we call user-generated content, all of those good things that they're saying about your brand that could be turned into actual reviews if you were only to ask, are getting left on the table. You can't just take the positive and hide your head in the sand with the negative. It really is a holistic look at both things because answering those negative comments help you with churn, customer churn, retention, so keeping money, which is great, especially in times like these.
Yeah.
But all of that positive UGC and positive sentiment, a lot of that also has what we call sales support questions happening, meaning where I said to Catherine, hey, do you have these in an 8? That is me showing you buyer intent. And if you don't come through and answer my buyer intent question, I might move on. I was ready to spend my money with you if you had my size and you talked to me quickly. But if you didn't, I've moved on. Jay Baer did a report called Time to Win. It's a wonderful report if you haven't read it. It's a little older now, but it still rings true. And he said that when the brands who are the first to respond in these types of questions, like do you have this in a size 8, are usually the brands to win the business, even if they're more expensive than the other brands that person was looking at. Like, let that sink in. If you can be the first one to respond faster than your competitors, you'll likely get the sale versus the competitors. So we often think of just negative comments and customer support and saving churn, but sales support and actually gaining business is a huge part of social care and what you can do just by looking at the conversations that are happening around your brand.
I see. So don't just focus in on trying to deal with the people who are unhappy. Yeah, and I think these are the ones that really boggle my mind that people don't respond to. Like you say, the people who are there trying to buy from you, basically, who are saying, yeah, like, how long is your shipping? Do you ship to this country? Do you have it in this color? Like, what's the fit like? You know, what's it made of? And why do you think people miss that so much? Do you think it's because they just don't think of social media as a customer care channel?
Yeah, people are still very behind on realizing that everybody's kind of moved online, right?
Yeah.
But they're very behind in understanding that because we moved online, they may get that, right? But they don't realize that because of that, we're now asking those sales questions. So we're looking to buy online, and then those support questions, we're looking to get support online. I also think, like I said, most businesses their employees work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So they can service those hours, and that's what they do. The other piece of that too is social happens outside of that. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of indirect conversations happening around your brand. So you would have to be using social listening to find out what people are saying, say, about your products versus your brand. If you're a product-led brand, there's a lot of nuance to it. But the brands who do embrace this type of customer care and social selling, let's call it, through social media channels, usually see a 20 to a 40% lift in revenue. Wow. So if you don't need a lift in revenue, don't worry about it. But if you could use a 20 to 40% lift in revenue, let's talk about social care.
Okay, and so that's 20 to 40% lift in revenues. That's coming from a combination of addressing concerns, buying intentions, effectively, people who are actually asking to give you money, and listening to the indirect as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like those three pieces together.
Yeah, you've nailed it. You're a pro already. See, it's really not that hard once you understand the concepts of it. You know, reducing customer churn, that's really important. And it kind of goes beyond that, because once you hear 3 times, I'll give you an actual client example. Yeah. We have a coffee brand that we work with. They're they're more of an appliance brand, but they focus a lot on coffee because people love coffee.
Yeah.
So they released their new cappuccino machine, and normally when they release a new product, people go wild, right? All of the comments and the sentiment that's happening online is positive because it's this new amazing thing. Everybody's really excited. We got flagged through social listening that there was a lot of negative conversation happening around this new product that we launched. We're like, that's weird. That normally doesn't happen. So the AI, right, the social listening let us know what was happening. But it was up to us, the humans, to come up with a creative solution. So I want to make that clear. The AI was wonderful because it let us know really quickly, hey, something's off. Way faster than we would have realized if we were doing this manually. But once we went in and we saw what the conversations were about, which was changing the coffee filter in this machine, you know, that's as far as the AI took us. We had to come up with the solution. So we went to the client and we were like, hey, people are complaining about the coffee filter in this machine. Like, where is the video and all of that on how to change that coffee filter? And they were like, oh, that's on page like 482 of the service manual. And we were like, what? No, you can't do that in this day and time, right? Nobody's going to flip through your Shakespeare novel to find a how-to on how to change it. You need a video. So we said, put together a video quickly, put it on the product page where people buy that thing. And then what do you do when you have a problem with your coffee filter? You Google it, and then Google will surface that video. So it's not just reducing churn in that moment. Like, we're able to say, hey, Catherine, oh my gosh, yes, here's a video on how that works. We just uploaded it to the product page, right? We're reducing churn for Catherine, but we're also eliminating the negative conversation altogether by coming up with that solution. Nobody needs to ask ever again once that video hits the product page. So it goes beyond just churn. It's kind of like eliminating the impetus. Like, it's like we're eliminating the whole need for that negative conversation. So you can see how on a grand scale that would be saving you a ton of money or a ton of churn.
Yeah, and I also think that one of the things that I often find myself saying to clients, because obviously, well, everybody at work is super passionate about their business, super passionate about building their business and about servicing their customers. And they get devastated if they ever get like a negative comment or a negative review. And I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that because everybody wants to do the best. But actually, what I often say to them is that if you have a negative experience with a brand and then the brand fixes it, listens to you, sorts it out, in a way you end up feeling more often, you feel more positive towards the brand because you're like, oh wow, these guys really listened. So all of the people who complained about the filter, if you were able to go back to them and say, thank you so much for flagging this, we've addressed this, we've made a video, I'm so sorry you found it inconvenient, hopefully this will explain it all, here's a link. I feel like if that were me, I'd be like, oh, wow, that's amazing. That's really great. Like, because just so often you just hear nothing, or there's such like apathy from a lot of, especially bigger businesses, I feel like, towards their customers, that you just feel like when people do show that they care, you kind of a bit like, oh, wow, they made a video.
You feel special.
Yeah.
There is so much research behind what you're saying. I talk about this in my book too. There's a makeup brand called Bloom, Blume, that you can all follow for great examples. They use, and here's why the positive matters, right? They take all of that user-generated content around their new products and then they use it to sell more product, right? So they're using that positive conversation to help them sell more, and they're using the negative to help them fess up when they mess up and sell more product. So the example that I have in my book is they had a serum that had a dropper, and they removed the dropper and put in a pump, and people were so upset, right? So they have a very loyal fan base. They're all over the socials being like, how on earth could you do this to us? We want the dropper back. This is terrible. I'm so mad. Like, lots of churn, right? Lots of churn, lots of potential churn, lots of negative comments. And you'd probably be sitting there if you were in that situation as a brand, like, oh no. It probably felt like the end of the world. But they were really smart. And they've always been, a brand who talks to their customers. So they said, we hear you. We're doing something about it. Well, they ended up switching back to the dropper. And to sell it, to debut it, they actually took all of these negative comments that people had. Like, how could you do this to us? Blah, 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 blah. And then they took all of these positive comments from people who had, very early bought the new product. And we're like, oh my gosh, you actually listen to us. You care about us. You this, you that. They put those into like a carousel on Instagram, and it led to a shop button so that people saw like it was bad, but we listened, and we are just basically are doing what you asked us to do. We brought back the dropper because you told us, we listened, and we care about you. I bet, I don't work for Bloom and they're not a client of mine, but I bet they sold a ton of serum in those weeks, because just by listening, just by saying, we heard you, oh, and here's what you want. That's the biggest thing I think people miss in social care, is just giving people what they ask for.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. I wonder how you work out that kind of like vocal minority. You have to kind of gauge like what's a normal bit of rumbling, right? Because there's always going to be complainers versus like when it's spikes, it's like an anomaly.
That's a great question. And you're going to start to, when you start using social listening, you're going to see what your benchmarks are. You're going to see kind of what those baselines are for positive, negative, and neutral conversations. Then when things spike, you can dig in and see what they're about. Like in the instance of the coffee machine, it wasn't about the brand. It wasn't about their other products. It was specifically about this machine, which we knew was a new launch. And that was weird. Normally when we launch things, it's like very positive. So we were able to understand what the anomaly meant, but then also to address it very quickly. There are times too that your competitors will have some negative rumblings happening around their brand. This is one of our favorite ways to use social listening, by the way. It's called competitor warfare. This is what we call it. And let's say Catherine's the brand and Brooke is her top competitor, and she uses social listening to listen to Brooke's audience. And she sees that Brooke's audience is complaining about X, we'll leave it blank, a lot. Catherine can then turn around and run what we call a differentiated campaign, saying something like, tired of X? With our brand, with Catherine's brand, we do Y and Z, so you don't ever have to worry about X. And what we're trying to do is use the competitors' weaknesses against them to gain more market share for our brand.
Yes.
Epson. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's a toothbrush brand called Surrey in the UK, and basically like their entire campaign is like, you know, you go on holiday and do you even bother taking your electric toothbrush because it runs out of charge on like day 3 and it's so loud, and you know, like all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's so smart. We do this with the unsexy brands too. We have a credit union who's a client, and they wanted us to quantify that negative conversation, right? You have to quantify it for the stakeholders, right? Which means you have to put those numbers behind it. You can't just be like, a lot of people are complaining about our overdraft fees. And they're like, great, what does that mean? Right? So we went and used social listening to quantify for it. 80% of your complaints online, no matter the channel, no matter where, in this whole period of time, like it was a year basically in this particular study, are about overdraft protection fees. If you can quantify that 80% of your problems were around this one thing, X, in this case, overdraft protection fees, we were like, hey, so if you can change this, if you can make this better, if you could say, hey, we listened and we're going to fix what you don't like, which they actually did, they got rid of 80% of their online negative conversation. Now imagine what that does for churn, but also imagine what it does for sales support. Because now their customers and customers that are peers of their customers are saying like, oh, you have a problem with so-and-so's competitors' overdraft fees. This bank did away with them. They do this instead. Right? So now you're like churning up word of mouth support, sales acquisition. It's such a holistic approach to the business. Like you hear social care and you think automatically of like social media customer support, but really it helps every aspect of the business, sales, marketing. We've changed product packaging based on these conversations. It helps with R&D. If you use it in the way we talk about it, it's something that can change your entire business for the better.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just such a great insight as well, because you know, you think about before social media, let's say like you use the example of packaging. If you think about something like a toothpaste or something, you know, if you were the executives working on this toothpaste brand, then you would have just, I suppose you'd see sales, like you would basically see sales numbers, but you wouldn't know that everybody actually had stopped buying it because you changed the formulation and everyone hated how it tasted, right? Because where would that be recorded?
People could email in or call in. It's such a smaller focus group. I mean, that's what social media is. It's the largest social group, and it's free. And yes, if you use social, so you're going to pay a little bit, but the insights that you receive for that amount of money, which it isn't cheap. So I'm going to be honest, you know, social listening is expensive just because the tool itself is very expensive, the way APIs work and we have to pool so many times and blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get the technical on you here, but it's not inexpensive. But if you know what you're doing with that data, just like you said, if you're looking for specific things around your brand that you can fix, I always say start with a negative, right? That's the easiest place to start, because then you start to understand these are the top 3 complaints. You quantify, you know, it's like the 80% story. If I knew 80% of my complaints were because I changed the formula, I'm going to do everything in my power to get back to that old formula.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that brings me on to my next question then. If you're listening to this podcast and you think, okay, Brooke, this sounds great, and you're a small retailer or e-commerce brand, for example, what would be a simple and practical way to get started with monitoring online conversations?
I'm going to give you the easiest way to do this, and you don't have to spend any money. It's just going to be a little bit of your time. I want you to just start yourself a spreadsheet and then have each social media platform that you're active on in a tab. You can download this through the native platform. If you have a dashboard tool that you're using, you could download it there. You could do this manually. I don't care how you get it done, right? But I want you to go to each one of those social platforms for this year, 2025. Look all the way back to the beginning of 2025. So we're talking about 6 months, right? And I want you to look at all of the places where you have conversations, whether that's someone sending you a DM, someone commenting on one of your posts, right? However those conversations are happening. And we're just talking passively, right? The ones
Yeah.
that are coming to us. I'm not asking you to look out at the ones where they're talking about you but not tagging you. Just the ones where they're obviously talking directly to you. And I want you to start writing down where it happened, obviously the platform. Take the whole conversation, like copy and paste the words into a column that says like comment or conversation. And then I want you to note what it's about. What is that comment about? Were they just commenting on your post because you asked for engagement, which is also a very good thing, by the way? Great. Just put engagement, right? That's fine.
Yeah.
But as you start to see questions like sales support, do you have this in a size 8? Do you ship to Australia? What's your return policy? These are all sales support questions. Just mark it as such. We tag it as acquisition or retention, but you don't have to use those big words. You can put gain or retain if you want to, right?
Yep.
Or sales support, customer support. Tag it, label it, right? Label it in that spreadsheet. And what you'll start to see is the platforms, where you have the most conversation happening with your customers or would-be customers. And those are the platforms I think you should focus on. Like, say, if you need to cut a platform because things are tight right now for everybody, you need to take budget down a little bit, you'll know from that spreadsheet, like, ooh, we don't really have any conversations happening on Twitter. Okay, put Twitter away, right?
Yeah.
Don't hang out on Twitter anymore because you're not getting any sort of conversation happening there. Then you're going to start to see how much acquisition versus retention or gain versus retain or sales support versus customer support conversation is happening on those channels. Now you'll be able to quantify sales support versus customer support, which is really gaining potential gains and potential churn.
Right.
And then I want you to keep doing this all the time until you get your baselines. You'll know which channels are the most active. You'll know where you have the most conversations. You'll know which channels have the most acquisition conversations, which is really important for sales, right?
Yeah.
Social selling. And then you'll know where you have the most retention questions. Now, retention isn't always about churn, but you'll start to identify inside of those retention questions where the churn is, where people are upset. And pretty soon, if you keep doing this, right, you'll know every month what your top 3 complaints are about.
Yeah.
And if internally you're trying to fix those complaints, think of the 80% of the bank story or the Bloom story, you'll know where to turn to get that churn to disappear and hopefully convert it into sales support conversations.
That's such a good point. And also it means that it'll call yourself out if you've been leaving them unanswered.
If that's happening, oh my goodness, yes, please start responding. An hour. Like, I know that sounds fast, but that is pretty much, people actually expect less than an hour on social for a response. Use a bot. If it's a frequently asked question, use a bot. If it's not a frequently asked question, unfortunately, you're going to have to find some way to say it. But your bot could also be like, hey, it's Saturday. Unfortunately, our humans feel like they have to have time off. They're not here right now, but they'll be back on Monday. Tell me what you want me to tell them, and we'll have them get back to you on Monday. And then get back to that customer on Monday. Don't break the promise.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, as your team grows, you can look to outsource. But also, I suppose the tracking will help you with the outsourcing too, because you'll start to see where it's worth your while. And it's going to feel a lot more justifiable to get somebody who can work in a different time zone, perhaps, or can support it at hours that you're not available, your team's not available. That's going to feel a lot more doable or a lot more worthwhile if you can say categorically, well, we get most of our conversations through here and they're happening on this platform, and this is the number of people that this could help clinch these sales. That's the first thing. And then I love that. Like, why not, if it's just you, or if you don't have that budget, then just responding, saying, got this, I got your message. It's like an autoresponder, isn't it, on your email that says, we've got your message, this is our hours of operation. And people are all like, okay, all right, it got sunk in, and I'll, hope to hear from them on Monday.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a whole other show. Setting up that bot's conversational workflow that helps feel people like they get that immediate answer, right? So that they don't run to your competitor. But also, how do we keep them from running to your competitor, even though we're giving them an answer, but we're telling them it's a bot? So like, that's a whole other strategy in and of itself. But yeah, setting up that conversational workflow will save you a ton of time and money. It'll save you the headache or the fear of thinking like, we're not there to answer when people are, when people mostly come through after hours and weekends and holidays. And you can set it up in like a cheeky way so that it feels like it has personality.
Yeah.
And that does help people want to stay engaged with you versus like, hello, I'm a bot. We will get your message to someone, like, don't be boring.
I love that, but make it clear. Yeah, I think that people get that. They understand. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. You've shared such great insight, and I just know it's been super helpful for all of our listeners. Do you want to finish off by telling everyone where they can find out more about what you do and how they can work with you?
Yes. So you can visit my company's website, which is B Squared, the letter B as in Brooke, squared.media, or you can visit brooksellis.com if it's more on like you want to know more about me, the person level. I've got those two sites. We have all kinds of free courses on creating some of this conversational content that gets people talking. I've got a LinkedIn learning course if you want to learn more there on social care. I've got lots of little courses spread out around the internet that can help you with things. But obviously, you can reach out directly to me on my website or on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out the most. And ask me any questions that you have. I'm always happy to help because I feel like people should know how to perform in social the way social works today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure we link to all of that in the show notes. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much to Brooke for sharing those amazing tips. Don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe the podcast, depending on where you listen. You'll be the first to know about each new episode. And if you have a moment to rate and review it, that makes a huge difference to us getting the podcast out in front of more people. Have a great week, and I'll see you next time.